The red light's on.
The red light's on, that's true. All right.
Okay, so you're not going to show me that, so I keep moving.
I am.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure that I have it set up before I tell you to start going. That is on. Okay, so yeah, I'll leave that like that.
Okay.
So you can see, make sure you're in there. The volume should be just fine. That's on auto. And yeah,
Okay.
just tell me if you want me to stop it or whatever, but
Oh, okay, I'll go.
you should have 60 minutes.
Okay.
60 minutes to rock and roll.
All right, I'm going to rock and roll.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
My name is Sheldon Greenberg. I was born on August 3rd, 1927, and my parents were Elizabeth and Louis Greenberg. My grandparents were Anne and Hyman Greenberg and Rose and Charles Cohn. I lived at 3528 Shakespeare Avenue in a two-story building where my grandparents bought two buildings, one right next to the other, or he put his four children, his three daughters, and his one son, and that's where I lived for a certain portion of my life. From there, I in turn went to Funston Grammar School, Funston Grammar School, which in turn was on Central Park in Armitage. I went there for my whole 8 years of grammar school, and from there I went to Roosevelt High School and spent 4 years there, graduating in 1945. I was not there for the total graduation because we in turn was listed in the service, and I enlisted in 1949 in July, 48 in July, and in turn was sworn in the end of July 1944, went to Great Lakes training station, took my basic training there, and was supposed to go in as a athletic instructor, but at that time the war was nearing its end and they didn't need no athletic instructors there. So in turn, after I graduated from basic training, I took the aptitude test, and at that time they in turn gave the test, and after the test found out that I was proficient in some medical technology. So they in turn asked me where I would like to go, and they gave me an option of working in an operating room, learning, or being an x-ray technician and a lab technician or so forth. And I chose x-ray and lab technician because of the fact that it was in San Diego, and San Diego was warm, and I thought that it would be a fine place to go. I came to San Diego in 1945, went through my training, and in 7 months was graduated as an x-ray and as a lab specialist, and stayed around there for another month or two until I was basically going to be re-signed. In the interim, when I was in training there, I in turn was also assigned as a fleet marine with Camp Pendleton as the base for the Marine Corps. And at that particular time, I was there 2-3 days a week helping with anything that had to be done that I was capable of doing, whether it was bandages, shots, taking x-rays, and so forth. At that time, I was also asked to play on their basketball team, which was the 9th Naval District. And we in turn played throughout the 9th Naval District, which included Los Angeles, San Francisco, and parts in the Raynon. And we traveled around and played and so forth and this and that. After I interned a certain period of time, after I finished with all my training and everything else, they decided to open up a hospital in Corona, California, which was from San Diego about 70 miles away. And they asked me if I would go there and take over the X-ray department there. And at that time, TB was a very, very prevalent thing, and this became a tuberculosis hospital. So it was treating and trying to save as many lives as we can. And there was an operating room next to my office, which the two surgeons were operating on the lungs and taking out ribs and taking out lobes, so we could save the life of an individual. Many of them died, and at that particular time, the wonder drug penicillin came out, and we were one of the first in the Navy to use penicillin. At that time, penicillin was administered through a syringe that was 6 to 8 inches long and a needle that was probably 8 to 10 inches long. And in order for that to work and as a delayed reaction, the penicillin was put into the syringe, and the syringe in turn had beeswax in it, and it absorbed the penicillin. And then he shot it into the buttocks of the individual, and the individual got a big welt on his buttocks, and in order for that, and at that time, that's the way penicillin was administered at that particular time because of the newness to it and so forth. We in turn at that time I stayed there for approximately a year to 15 months running the X-ray department. And with the advent of penicillin and with the advent of the new surgical techniques, it was at the point where tuberculosis was starting to become very controllable. We could control it. And in order to control it and make sure that the patients were right, we monitored them on a continual basis. But after that 15-month period of time, we found out that definitely penicillin would help it tremendously, would arrest a lot of the cases and stop the ability of having to go in there and cut and taking out ribs or taking out lobes. So the commanding officer of the Naval Training Center and Naval Hospital in San Diego came up to me and asked me if I would be willing to go to Pearl Harbor because tuberculosis was very prevalent all over the world. So I agreed to do that. And so in turn, I handpicked 5 people to go with me. So we had 6 people that were going to go. And in order to go, we had to have a facility to take the x-rays with. So we got a hold of a box car. We had them install wheels and axles on it and also a Rio cab in the front of it. And inside we put a mobile, portable x-ray unit. In September of '46, we went overseas, and we in turn came to Pearl Harbor, and we were assigned a barracks area to do it. Then we were assigned to take pictures of every Naval, Army, Marine personnel on the base, which in turn were 1 million and some. And so we in turn, but in order to do that, there were only basically 2 people at a time could work the unit. So we broke it off in 3 ships. Well, every day a different ship would take the pictures and bring it back and have them read, and we would look at them and so forth. We had the authority to read or make a diagnosis on that, but at that time, after you look at 750,000 x-rays and you agree with the doctor on a continual basis, you were able to spot the problems, you would be able to say something, but all the reports were written by the doctor who was in charge in turn. In the process of doing that, The days that we were off, we were able to do and function as we wanted to do. So I, in turn, allowed them to take their vacations. We had a doctor who bought a PT boat, who in turn used to take the boys out for a fishing trip and be able to catch something and fry it or cook it right aboard ship, which made it very good, and we really enjoyed ourselves there. After a period of 8 months, so forth, which we handled the survey, we took care of everything, we did it. We were asked if we would like to go to Guam to do the same thing, and at that time we said yes, but we still wanted to make sure that everything was taken care of here. So another 2-3 months went by, and we finally agreed that we were going to go to Guam. We put our X-ray unit on a PT boat, and we in turn went to Guam, and at Guam we did the same thing, and we went to a multitude of other islands to take X-ray pictures of these people. After that, we came back to Pearl Harbor, and knowingly before we went, I wanted to also emphasize the fact that there was how should I call it, a group of Navy personnel, medical personnel, who were asked to go to the bottom of the Arizona and see if they could extract the humans out of the ship who were sunk with the ship and who have died in there, but the full figure was basically there because of the compression and so forth and this and that. And so that's a project that we did in the interim, and going down and looking and seeing, we saw this, and we felt that really nothing can, because if we opened up it would explode. But there was one porthole where we decided to try and see if we could do it, and in the process of doing it, we did it. But exactly what we thought would happen was an explosion. Everything in that particular compartment disintegrated, and there was nothing left of anything. So that was something that we didn't do, and we didn't get involved in that at all. And then we left there on Pearl Harbor. We had our own Quonset hut, we had our own galley to do it, to eat and so forth. So we were really an independent group of 6 people with 2 doctors who in turn were able to do everything. We had a report to the base once a week, and that was basically on Sunday, and Sunday for dinner or lunch. We had a report in there, and that was the best meal they served all week. So we were very happy to do it. In the process before that, we were eating at a canteen. We were eating at a little restaurant that was in the area, and it was very hectic to take these pictures and to read these pictures, to get all this information back and so forth. But it was well worth it, because we saved an awful lot of lives, and this was something that was very, very important to us as the group of 6. And that's it. After we came back, and it was really, we really had tuberculosis under control, we in turn were assigned to taking in recruits and taking in people to give them shots, to take their blood from, take x-rays, basically for broken arms, broken legs, for appendicitis, for whatever had to be done. We were able to do it, and we did that for the next year, over approximately a year, at Tripler General Hospital and through our unit. And Tripler General Hospital is the major hospital in Pearl Harbor, and that was Navy person. That was a naval hospital, and we did it. We took whatever happened. Anybody crashed on Hickam Field, we took care of those patients there, whatever had to be. Anybody got shot, whatever it might be. At that time, you know that the war was over already, but there was a lot of things going on, a lot of sick people that had to be taken care of. In July of 1948, I was told that I would be shipped back to the States and discharged in the end of July 1948. I enlisted as a minority cruise, which basically was 3+ years. until my 21st birthday. My birthday was August 3rd, 1948, so they were going to discharge me 3-4 days before. So they told me to start getting ready, get my papers together, and do everything, and that's what I did. On the 27th or 26th of July, I would believe that was approximately the time, I boarded ship, and we took a ship across the ocean to Treasure Island in San Francisco for the being processed for discharge. And at that time, we had to stay around for a while. We had to go through a lot of things we came across. We did everything, and it was fine, and we stayed there until, and my discharge was made on August 1st, 1948, and I was able to secure an airplane ride to go back to my hometown of Chicago. The airplane ride consisted of 14 stops, which took me approximately 12 hours to fly from San Francisco to Chicago, making these different stops up, stops down, and going and so forth and this and that. At that time, I'm sure airplanes didn't travel no more than 400 miles, 400 miles an hour. In the correction of doing it, it was 20 hours, not 12 hours that it took me to get home. Once I got home, I really didn't feel that great because of all the ups and downs on the airplane, but it worked out fine. I walked in the house. I didn't tell my mother and father I was coming home. I got a great welcome, and that's where I was, and that was the 1st of August, 1948. When I got home, all I wanted to do was have some good meals and rest and relax and have a good time for a while. And in turn, that's what I did for the first 30 days that I was home. I, in turn, at that particular time, somebody contacted me and asked me if I would like a job working for a doctor, doing his x-ray and radium and some of his blood work for him. And I says, well, I'd like to go and see. And I went to meet this doctor, and he was a fine gentleman. His name was Maurice I. Kaplan, and he had an office at 4010 West Madison Street in Chicago. And when I went there and I talked to him and so forth and this and that, and he's been around since 19 as an x-ray, as a radiologist. He was around since 1932, 33. So he had a lot of experience when I got there, and we agreed to terms of working, and I told him that I wouldn't start for 2 weeks, but after that I would come in and start and do what he wanted me to do. And in a 2-week period of time, after I played around for a little more on the outside, I went into the office, and we in turn had a great relationship, this doctor and I. He was getting older, so in turn I did 90% of the x-ray. I did 10% or 15% of the radium work, and in turn the lab work, we had a lab technician, so all I did was help in the event that she needed help, and that was with the drawing of the blood or the cardiograms or chest x-rays, whatever it might be. And in the process of doing that, I was able to, through him, meet all the doctors in the area, whether it was the dental doctors or it was the physicians. I, in turn, was, after a short period of time, was asked if I would come to their office to do the x-rays of their teeth if they wanted it done, or x-rays of people who needed and couldn't go to the hospital of a broken arm, a broken leg, broken hip, whatever it might be, and so that's basically what I did. And in the process, I was associated and did x-ray work at Garfield Hospital, 1 or 2 other hospitals in the area, Michael Reese Hospital, and so forth. And So I was running, taking these x-rays and coming back and redeveloping and giving the doctor's reports through my doctor and myself that of what was wrong and what had to be done with that. And I also took and was take the cardiogram on the outside and drew the blood if they needed the blood work and so forth. So I did basically all these things in that period of time. Well, that period of time was 1948, which I started at the end. In the process, I got married in December of 1948, and so it gave me a little more impetus to really go to work and really do something. And I stayed and I did this work for until 1952, and at that particular time, the doctor wanted to sell his practice because he in turn was not only getting older. The radium that he was handling at the beginning with his hands, with his fingers, and the fingers started to turn black, and he was starting to lose his fingers. He lost the touch of his fingers, but he in turn decided that this is the right time for him to leave because he didn't know how long he was going to be around. So he sold this to another doctor, and this doctor agreed to his terms, called me into the office, and we talked, and we made a deal. And after we made a deal, it was fine, and I was supposed to take my vacation, which was a 2-week vacation, which I did. And when I came back that Monday morning, 2 weeks later, the doctor turned around and said to me, we have to change it a little bit. I can't pay you as much as I promised you, and I can't do that. And as a young whippersnapper, my answer to him was, thank you very much. I don't think I want to work here, and goodbye, and lots of luck to you. And I walked out of the office. Having 2 children at that time, not a job, was not a smart thing to do or a right thing to do. But I had my own pride, and if that happened, I was not going to work for this doctor. And after that, I was out looking for different work to do, and I did. I had no problem finding something to do, and sometimes it was 2 or 3 jobs that I worked at the same time. But I did. I got a job in as a sales manager for a phonograph and a tape recorder company, and it was a friend of mine whose father owned it, and he gave me a job, and I had a certain part of the country, another man had a certain part of the country, and we worked for there, and we kept the plant going for a little while until we found out. We got a call from the government saying that whoever was in charge of bookkeeping that forgot to pay excise tax on the tremendous amount of phonographs, and at that time it was a lot of excise tax, and that they were closing us down unless somebody paid X amount of dollars, and I guess the money was not around, so we were called in, and both of us came in, and we saw the sign on the door that says nobody allowed in, this is property of the United States government. So we got in touch with the people. We had orders for thousands of phonographs, and they didn't mean anything. They wouldn't do it. They were going to put this place up for auction. And the man who owned it before couldn't bid on it. He couldn't do anything on it. So the lawyer who was handling the case for us turned around and asked me if I would be the bidder. The money would be provided, whatever it might be, to take care of the purchase of this company. So in turn, I agreed to do it, not really knowing what I was going to get into, but I agreed to do it because I thought that it would help everybody. So what happened is it went up for auction. I went in there and did the bidding, and we bought it for really basic nothing because they didn't have anything to do with it. There was nothing in there. They had no customers. They had nothing. So that it was auctioned off. I don't know if there was a deal made beforehand or not, but it was bought by me. In turn, it was paid for, and I became the owner of this phonograph company. When I became the owner of the phonograph company, I walked into the office, and at that particular time, I was 24 years old, 25 years old. I called all the workers back, And I says, here's your job, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to take this company. We're going to take every part we have, whatever it is. We're going to build as many phonographs as we can and tape recorders as we can. I will find the outlets. We are going to sell everything, and we are going to pay all the creditors off. And whatever is left, everybody will get the share in what's left, but this will not be a company after that. And these people agreed to doing that. Well, for 2 months we did everything, and we had bills. I had a $600,000 bill from a motor company that made the tape recorder motors and made the speakers for us and did those things. And these people weren't going to get their money, and the rest of it, a lot of material we had, so we were able to put it together. And we in turn turned around and we sold everything and every tape recorder that we could make, every phonograph we could make, and we came back. I was able to pay the motor company and the speaker company off, pay everybody their help, and not take any money myself. And my man that was with me did not take any money, and that was basically the end of the company. We closed the company off, but we paid everybody off, and to this day, everybody that I've done business with at that time, I still talk to some of them, and some of them still tell me, or the kids of the people that I dealt with, talk to me and says, if you ever want to go into business, you ever want anything, just don't hesitate to come and do it. And I said, fine, you got it, this is it, I feel very good. I would have loved to make and save that money, and I could have been a millionaire at that time with $600,000. But it didn't work out, and that's what I did. So when we closed up that, it was a matter of going out again. Didn't have anything in my to work with. I still had my 2 children. So I went out, and at that time, I went out and I became a sales manager for a sweater company, and went out and sold. And I made enough to live on, and in the process of doing that, I also worked at another place that in turn gave me some extra income at nighttime. So I was able to hold, not making a lot of money, but able to put the food on the table, pay the rent, and so forth, and this and that. After I stayed there for a couple of years, that company went belly up too, because everything changed. So now it was a matter of finding something else, and I went into the real estate business. To make a long story short, I did a multitude of things until 1959. But I accommodated. I worked in 3 or 4 or 5, 6 different places, and I worked 2 or 3 jobs at one time. So I always had enough to take care of my family. In 1959, I had another child, so I had 3 children at that time, and it was Sherry, which was my oldest, Judy, which is my middle, and Howard, which is my youngest son. Okay, Sherry was born in 1949, Judy was born in 1952, and Howard was born in 1959. In 1959, while I was working at a haberdasher as a part-time, somebody I knew was going into the liquor business, and they in turn went to work for this person who started this liquor business and stores, and he worked for him. 6 months later, I called him up and I says, I need another part-time job to do it, because the haberdasher was only good at certain times at a holiday and maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and I needed something a little more steady than that to make some extra money. He says, let me talk to the owner, and he talked to the owner and says yes, and I went there and I talked to him and so forth and this and that, and they put me on as a part-time, but I worked 4 nights at that time, and I was making twice as much as I was in the haberdashery, so that worked out fine. And after 6 months, the owner of the company came in and said to me, how would you like to work for me full-time? And I in turn says, you couldn't pay me enough to work full-time. So I need X amount of dollars. He says, try me. I'll in turn pay you what you need to stay here. And I says, okay, if you'll do that, that's fine. It's 1 job, it's not 3 jobs, so at least I'll have more time with my family. Even though I'll put in 50, 60 hours here, I'll still have more time with my family. So I took the job, and he made me an assistant manager in one of the stores. After 4 months, in turn, he came back to me again, and he says, hey, I like what you're doing. He says, how would you like to be a manager? And I says, I don't know enough about it. He says, we'll train you and so forth. I says, okay, but I need more money. He says, okay. He says, we'll raise it to manager's pay. So I became a manager of a store, and I took that store from almost going to nothing to one of the best stores around, okay, and did it with the help of the personnel that was there and the marketing and ability and so forth that I learned going through the tape recorder business and the sweater business and the haberdashery business. And 6 months later, he came into me and he says to me, how would you like to come into the main office? We are expanding. We have 8 stores now. How would you like to come in there and help us in the office? And I says, that would be fine, but I need more money. He says, no more money yet. You got to come in and prove yourself and do your thing, and let's see what happened. I says, okay, fair deal. You raised me twice in the last 6, 8 months of the year. I says, I'll come in and I'll give it a try for a certain amount of time. And if I no good, then you can fire me. And if I'm good, you'll have to give me more money. They said that was fine. So I went into the main office. And at that time, they says, okay, as far as the liquor purchases are concerned, you are not going to be involved in that at this particular time. But you handle everything else, the pop, the beer, the cigars, the cigarettes, the candy, whatever else is sold in the store, that's going to be yours. You'll have to build this up because we cannot build that up. The liquor we have, now we have to build this up. Well, that's exactly what I did. It took me a year, 14 months, 15 months, and we were almost selling equal amounts of sundries and tobacco and sodas and beer as we were liquor, which brought in a lot more revenue and so forth, which made it the stores more stable and able to do everything. And at that time, it was asked if I would want to buy into it, become part of the situation. And we did it, and this is what happened. This happened in 1963, okay, after that period of time. But in the interim, from 59 until 60, 61, there is another facet that I will explain to you happened, which leads me into where I was for 49 years as a volunteer for City of Hope. But I will not get into that at that particular time. So that's where I stayed in the retail liquor business. We built it to X amount of stores, and by 1970, there was another 2 proposals on the table that we could expand, but we couldn't expand it as a retailer, had it expanded in a different way. Firstly, a man came to me and wanted to sell me a lot of wine, and I didn't need his wine. I had all the contacts I needed for wine. I didn't need his wine, but we had a conversation for maybe another 3 hours. And after the conversation is, okay, you don't have to buy wine, but I have a proposal for you, or a proposition for you that I think you might be interested in. There's a company that in turn tried to sell wine directly to the consumer through the 3-tier system, but didn't know how to do it and was thrown out of the United States. And he presented me with what they did and so forth, and I knew where they were wrong, what they were doing, but I didn't know. So he says, how would you like to go and talk to these people and see if you can put a program together to work with these people in the United States? They're a foreign company. They're from Europe, and they cannot come back in the United States unless they come in under a different name or so forth. So I says, okay, let me think about it. I'll go home and I'll think about it, and I'll see what the situation is. Talk to my wife about it and so forth. So that's exactly what I did. I went home, I talked to her about it. I said, this sounds pretty good. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, but I think maybe I'll try it and see what happens. What can I lose? Okay, all I can lose is my fare wherever I'm going, and that's the end of it. Well, I went back and I called them up and I says, yes, I'll be more than glad to attempt to sit down with them to see if I can put a program together for them. And I will work out some kind of arrangements for myself. And you, as you stipulated, would love to be the the exporter, or importer, I would be more than glad to make you the importer, and I would be a broker, whatever it might be, but I know that there has to be an importer, has to be a wholesaler, and there has to be a retailer to finally get this into the individual's hands. So he agreed. He says, I'll pay your way to go to Europe. I says, no. I says, I think I'll pay my own way. I don't want an obligation. All I want is the ability to go talk to him. If I can put a deal together, then in turn I will come back, and you will be the importer of stipulation. So I prepared myself to go, but I knew at that particular time I had to do some other things. I had to change my position in the company. I couldn't be a retailer. So I changed my position in the company, became an importer. You almost through?
No.
An importer. And through that, I went to Europe, basically Germany. I flew in, I landed the plane, and at that time the plane landed. I got out, and there was a big black Mercedes there waiting to pick me up. And when he picked me up, he couldn't speak English, so I really didn't know what was going to happen to me. They might have shot me or whatever it might be, but I got in this thing, and they took me to the hotel. And when I got in the hotel, there was somebody in turn who could speak English. See how much more time.
All right. You got another 20, 25 on here,
Okay, all right.
and I got more tape, so.
Okay. No, I'm not doing any more today. This is enough for speaking at one time. So when I got there, he picked me up, put me in the car. We got to the hotel, and at the hotel, people spoke English. So they said to me, Mr. Greenberg, he says, we have a room for you, and the people from the winery will be here in a half an hour. Go up and wash yourself, take care of yourself, have a drink or whatever it might be, and they'll be here. And as soon as they come, we'll call you and you come down. And so I went up, I washed up, and I cleaned up, and I had a bottle of water up there. And in half an hour, 35 minutes, I got a call, and they says, there's a man down there by the name of Klaus Metsch, and he in turn is here to see you. He's the general sales manager of this company. I says, okay. So I went down. I looked at him, he looked at me. Evidently must have been some eye contact, because he smiled right away and I smiled right away. He spoke English perfectly. He came over, introduced myself, and he says, I'm Klaus Metsch, I'm general sales manager of the company. Let's go have a drink, let's go sit down, let's talk about what the situation is about. And I says, okay, fine. We sat down, we talked about it, and it probably took us 20 minutes, 25 minutes in the conversation. And he said, I like you, I think you could be able to do it. And I really, honestly, wasn't sure how I was going to do this, but I'm sure that I could have figured out something. So I says to him, I says, yeah, I would like to try it and see what the situation, but I need the opportunity to go back, sit down with some people and talk to them and see where we could put this, or I could put this together, okay? And he says, fine. He says, let's forget it. He says, let's go out and have some dinner, which we did. And he said, after that, we went out and gambled. There is a casino in Frankfurt that in turn only people that are tourists can go, not people that are native to Germany. But he spoke so well, he was able to fool them. We went in there, and in that time we went in. So as we went in, there was a roulette wheel there. I got to tell you, this is a great story. I went in there and I took the ages of my daughter, my birthdays of my daughter, my 2 daughters, and my son, and in turn put them on the 3 numbers and spun the wheel, and lo and behold, they came up and I won $745. And I said, that's it, let's go out, we have a good time, I'm buying from now on, and that's it. So I'm pretty sure that solidified my position with him. So we did that, and then after that he says, I'll pick you up in the morning, I'll take you to the plant and or the winery, and you can meet the principals and see what what the situation is, see what you're getting into and so forth. So that's fine. So the next morning he picked me up, we had a little breakfast. He took me to the winery, which was the biggest in Germany, and he introduced me to the two principals, which one couldn't speak English, the other one did, and we talked and we haggled, and they're looking for all the angles that they can get to make the deal, but they don't want to make a deal because they don't want to give anything for it and so forth. So we argued and we haggled and we did everything else, and finally I said, then it's probably better off that we don't do business because we're not going to come to agreement. I says, I need X amount to do it. You don't want to pay me X amount, I'm not going to do it, and I'm not putting any of my money. You want the deal, it's going to be your company, it's going to be your deal in the United States. I says, I'll put it together for you, and if I don't, you don't have to pay me anything, but if I put the deal and so forth. And he says, well, what kind of guarantee do we have? And I says, the guarantee will be that I will guarantee you if we put together, we'll sell X amount of cases in the first year. If you make X amount of dollars on each case, which is a minimum amount, you'll have all the money you invested back in there. They hemmed and they hawed and they had and they had, and finally they agreed to the figure that we talked about. And he says, yes, we can do it, but everything has to come through them before they go, the printing material and all that. I said, that's fine. I'm not going to print. I'm not paying for that. So you can do it all here and so forth and this. But I'll tell you, if you do it through here and you send it, the mailing out here to the United States, inviting people to wine tasting, the government's going to stop you right away because they'll think that you're sending the wine from Europe, and that's against the law. You can't send the wine directly to a consumer from Europe. It's impossible. You can't do it from any place. You got to go through the three-tier system. So their answer was, okay, you go and tell us how we can do it and what we can do. And I says, fine, this and that. So we went in, we had a couple of drinks, we had tasted some wine. I saw the material that they used, and they were selling this way in Austria, in France, in Italy, in Spain, in England, in Australia. So they were selling this method all over, but in those countries you can get away with it. You can sell directly to the consumer, walk in and sell. You can't do that in the United States. So I saw what they had, I saw the material that they had and so forth, I saw the wine, and I says, okay, fine. So meantime, they took me back to the hotel. We made arrangements to fly back to Chicago the next day. I got in an airplane and I went back. I came back to Chicago and I sat down in my office and I started to dribble a little bit and figure out how we can do this and what we can do and what we need to do that. And it took me about 30 days. And in 30 days, I had a program that I presented to them, sent it to them by fax. And they looked at it and they said, well, we'd like to change this and this. And when they send it back to me, and I turn around and say, you're not changing anything. This is the way it is. He says, well, the only thing we want to change is we want to put our lawyer in charge. And I sent it back. I said, if your lawyer's in charge, something's going to happen. It's never going to work. They said, that's the only way we're going to go, and they were very emphatic about it. And I says, okay, fine, put your lawyer in, but if it blows up, it's not my fault. I want to know. I will prove that they can't do a thing. So what happened was we started getting the material, we started organizing, we started getting the listings for mailing to get these people out. We started renting space in different hotels so we could have wine tastings. We did all this, and their lawyer started to play with the government, trying to get authorization to do this and that. And really what happened is they rebuffed him. They told him, get away, don't even bother with us. We don't want nothing. We want nothing to do with your company. So I sent a fax to Europe and I says, either that or cancel the whole thing because it's not going to work with him here. He just doesn't know how to handle the American lawyers or the American government. So they send it back, says, okay, fine. He will look after, oversee. And I send another fax back. I says, no, he won't. He will do nothing. I will give him the papers after we agreed to something, but I won't give it to him before because I don't want no opinion from him. My lawyers will handle it. And it so happened my lawyers were the best in the United States. They handle all liquor cases. That's all they did. So in turn, this is exactly what happened. We in turn took my lawyers. We got the approval to do the tastings on the basis that they were going to be there to look at it to see that it was proper because they anticipated the wine was going to be shipped over here and just delivered directly to that consumer, and the consumer would pay and send the money back to Europe. Well, I knew it wasn't going to be that way, but they couldn't figure that out. So when we had our first tasting, I invited the government, which is the BATF, the IRS, to come in and sit down and watch the presentation and how it's handled and so forth and this and that. And that's exactly what I did. But I said, I will sit at the table with them and I will go through this whole thing with them and talk to them. And that's exactly what I did. And in the end, by the end of the day, I sold them each a case of wine. And in turn, we sold enough wine to pay the expenses of almost the next 2 or 3 tastings. So we sold that much wine. We in turn that was a wine tasting at the Marriott Hotel in Chicago, and that was started at 6 o'clock at night. We finished at 8:15, and at that time we sold approximately 3,000 cases of wine, which was very good, which we explained would be handled from an importer to a wholesaler to a retailer, who in turn would verify the order, which made it legal, and in turn would deliver to the consumer, which is fine. We also had a wine tasting at 9 o'clock in the same place. We did 2 wine tastings. We had the 600 people come to the second wine tasting, and those 600 people bought 1,800 cases of wine. Now, I want to tell you that between the 2 of them, which is the 50-some hundred cases of wine selling that week, I mean, that one tasting was just amazing. After that, in turn, we did tastings on a continual basis there for a while, and we sold in the first year there close to 1 million cases of wine. So, it was successful. Everybody made money on this, and everybody did what they had to do. The lawyers took care of what they had to do, and so forth and this. In the meantime, the principals of the winery reneged on their deal to me because we sold more case than they ever anticipated. They wouldn't pay me that much and so forth. So we rearranged it. I wasn't going to fight with them. We rearranged the dollars and cents, whatever it might be, and that's the way it started, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it continued through to this day under other leads, because I sold out in 1992. But at the same time, I in turn got involved in 1 or 2 products that were produced in Mexico. One of them was a product called Cocool, which in turn was an offshoot of Kahlua. Okay, in doing it, I started to put together a marketing program, an advertising program, and so forth, to bring this to market, and yet knowing that somebody at Kahlua was going to sue me. And that's exactly what they did. They sued me for that because they said I infringed on theirs. It's too close. The Cocool was too close to Kahlua, and also I used a recipe book, whatever it might have been. So in turn, we went out, we sold some of this stuff, but they were really pressing me, and they really had lawsuits against me and depositions and everything else. So in a year's time after we sold 15 or 18,000 cases, me and another fella, I went back to him and told him that, hey, this is too much hardship. I mean, I can't handle this the way it is right now. Please, you can have the name Cocool, and you can have whatever I have in inventory, whatever it is, just you'll have to take care of any legal problems that we have and so forth and this and that. And they agreed, and they did it. They paid the legal expenses. They had the name Cocool. I didn't have Cocool anymore. But one thing they didn't know is that a year before, 9 months before, I got a hold of another company, and I enticed them to take this product under their own name and their own label, and in turn pay me a fee of every case they sold, as long as I had a contract with them. Well, we argued, we fought, we did everything else, and I finally convinced them to do that, and they agreed to do it. So the product became the name of Sabroso, Sabroso, and it was very, similar to Kahlua, and it was when we produced an amaretto too, and they came out with Sabroso. After the lawyers agreed to my terms with them to get a Cocool, And they called me 2 days later and they said, nobody has ever done this to us before. Come out and made a deal like that. As far as professionally is concerned, I think you were totally wrong. As far as personally is concerned, I think that you pulled the wool over our eyes, but it was the greatest deal anybody could ever pull, because nobody could get a deal like this. So that's the story, and this is what happened at that particular time. And this went on through the 70s. They did it, they sold, the name of the company was Barton Brands. They sold the product, and we received a commission for doing it, and I received my severance, my pay with the Perrault company, who was the wine company through that period of time. And Todd?
Yes.
You turn it off, will you, please?
All right.
You can turn it off. I'm getting hoarse.
All right.
How much more time do I have? 10 minutes?
8 minutes.
Okay.
You want to keep going or turn it off?
Leave it for the 8 minutes. I'll see what I can get into 8 minutes. I'm getting a little hoarse.
You want some water?
Now, through the 1970s, we took care of this. We did it. We grew. We made a success. All the people in the industry who thought that this was going to kill the wine business wouldn't talk to me for the first year and so forth, but the end results was we created the demand for wine throughout the country. We set up distribution in Michigan and Missouri and Florida and New York and a multitude. We went from state to state to do it, which we had to change the laws because there was a lot of antiquated laws built into prohibition and everything else that was never changed. Laws such as you can't deliver wine unless it's on a motorcycle or a horse. I mean, it's crazy, but that was things that were done, and you had to prove to the congressmen, to the senators, to everybody that we weren't directly selling wine, was shipping wine from the United States from Europe over to the United States. So we conquered most of these problems. We did tastings all over Illinois, and we progressively got better and better, and we sold more and more. Everybody seemed happy and so forth. And near the end of '79, the European company started sending people over from Europe to take charge, because they thought that they in turn knew better than everybody else how to do it. And in the interim, whatever it might be worth is the fact is that whatever we did in 1969 or 1971, 72 with the wine, they're doing today. So you know that they regressed. We were selling 70,000, 80,000, 100,000 cases a year, and they in turn are not selling anywhere near that today. So it's a sad issue. It went down, but in the interim they paid me, and I really started to back away after that period of time. They still pay me. They had a contract. They had to pay me, so there was no question. So I decided at that time that I was going to open up another office, and I was going to become an importer exporter of alcoholic beverage and a marketing consultant. So that was in 1980. I incorporated myself. I got full approval by the government to be able to do that. I divested myself from all retail operations, so I had nothing to do with them outside of being able to do work for them at a fee that they had to pay me, and which they did, and a multitude of other retailers paid me, and a multitude of suppliers paid me to do the marketing for them. So I had that business to go. In the meantime, I had the wine business that was still going on. I wasn't doing much with it, but in turn I was still collecting, and I was there as an advisor. And if they needed, they did call me, and they did every so often, but not on a continual basis. And as far as the coffee was concerned, the Sabrosa, the Bartons did call me. I had to do certain things for them to maintain it. So I really kept a busy schedule, and I worked on a continual basis through That period of time of through 1988, 89, 90, my wife became very ill, was very ill for a long period of time. She started telling me or talking to me about not staying in the winter in Chicago and so forth. So in 1992, I I severed my relationship with the wine people, and in turn they paid me off. They bought my contract out. As far as the Sorosa was concerned, I left that to my partner on the basis that nobody wanted to deal with him, that I was the only one who could handle it, so I would handle it for him and do this and handle the situation. So that's the way they did. We moved from there. We went and came to San Diego, where we've been coming on a month basis, 2-month, 3-month basis. We bought a condo there 7 years before, 1983. So we moved there and lived there. In 1992, we came back, and a year or two later, we bought a house. We sold the condo. We bought a house, and this is where we are at this particular time. And through that, there is a whole new story that I can present to you, which I will present at the next time, of my voluntary work, my school work, and so forth, and this and that, and I'll be able to incorporate it into the film and handle the situation. So up to now, this is what it was as far as a business is concerned. Now there's a social and a moral or a volunteer way of doing something. So that's it. I'm sure that I just about cancel out, right?
What's that?
The time?
Yep, that should do it. Yep. All right, so let's see here. That's ready to go. That's ready to go.
Oh, there I see myself.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Pleasure to do business with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so that's
Yeah.
ready to go.
Okay. Okay, this is the second CD, and I am going to speak about a multitude of things, not necessarily in any particular sequence. I will readjust that as we type this out and have it. Let me first start by saying that in turn I was, as a young boy growing up on the Shakespeare Avenue at 8 years old, I had to go out. My father told me that I should work and make some money. So at 8 years old, I went out and I sold papers on Sunday morning with a cart. I had to walk about 18 to 20, 25 blocks yelling Sunday morning paper. And made probably somewhere around $2, $3, $4 doing this, and it was a chore, but it's something I had to do. And my father used to drive up in the car after I got through and walking to the garage to bring any of the papers I had left over back, and to ask me if I'd stop at the bakery and pick up some rolls and sweet rolls, which in turn probably took away 80% of the money that I made, but that's what I did. And that went on I did that for approximately a year and a half to 2 years. After that, I went and started to work in cream, but I worked it out with them where I didn't have to, and from there on in, I had no problem for a couple of years. In the grammar school, I in turn was involved with all the sports that were available to me or to everybody there, and did that. And I also, at that particular time, at 10, 11, 12 years old, started to take lessons and play the clarinet. And when I was 11 and a half and 12 years old, I joined a band. There were 5 of us. We created a band to play, and we played at some different functions, and we ended up playing in Chicago in the particular that time in the 38s, 39s, 40s. There was a radio program that was called Morrisby Amateur Hour, and Morrisby Sax, I'm sorry, the Amateur Hour. And yeah, we were there, and we entered this contest. We played on the radio, and we won second prize, which is free trip to Riverview at that time, which was a amusement center, one of the biggest in the country, and great in Chicago for doing it. They had everything there, and also some free tickets for movie houses, and also a free shirt from Morrisby Sax, which was great at that particular time. We did that until I was about 13 and a half years old, which I was bar mitzvahed at that particular time. And my bar mitzvah was at my grandparents' temple. In turn, it was a dual bar mitzvah. It was a bar mitzvah of myself and my cousin, who was 6 weeks older than I, but we had a dual bar mitzvah, and that worked out pretty well. In the process of learning what I had to do with my bar mitzvah prior to that, when 11 and a half and 12 years old, we had special tutors that taught us how to do the things that we needed to do, and speak and learn the Torah, which we had to do. And it seemed to work out well. We had a great time, and I had, in that class, there was 4 or 5 other fellas from the neighborhood that in turn were very good friends of mine, so we really had a great time at this class in the woman's teacher's house. And in that process, we accomplished what we had to do, and created a lot of problems for her because we just won't get around at the class. But we did graduate from the class, and we did become very, very proficient in what we had to do, and it was fine. When I went into high school at my 13-year birthday, I went to Roosevelt High School, and in Roosevelt High School I tried out for the swimming team in my freshman year, and was told that the only way I could swim, because I had taken a physical, that I couldn't join the team because I had a hernia and they wouldn't let me in. So the only way I could be on that team if I went and had the hernia fixed. I went home to my parents, told my parents about that. They took me to the doctor, and the doctor says, yes, I do, and he could repair it. And I said, okay, fine, as soon as you can, I will do that. And it ended up that 1 week later, I was in a hospital. I had my operation. I was in a hospital for 10 days. I was home for 3 weeks, and I couldn't swim for another 4 or 5. So at that particular time, I gave up swimming and just continued to do the schoolwork that I had to do. And in my second year of high school, I became a member of the basketball team, and I played basketball there on that team for the next 3 years through my senior year. As being in high school, I in turn had to work. I had to make money to subside on and subsist on. And so in turn, we became, my friend and I, became, we started, went and we started selling shoes at Bert's Shoe Store on Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. And we in turn made a lot of money at that particular time because we manipulated. As you know, in shoe stores, they have lines of chairs to sit down on, and there's a front section and a back section. And we, in turn, had the two front sections, my friend Harold Rubenstein and myself. And in the process of doing that, we stole all the customers that came in, and we ended up with 2, 3, 4 customers. While the guys in the back got 1, maybe 2 if they were lucky. And we stayed there, and we did that for 2 or 3 years. And in doing that, we were able to make a lot of money. We made $50, $60, $70 a week doing that, which at that time was a tremendous amount of money. And that money we used to buy the school supplies, to buy our lunches, and also to go out on Friday night and Saturday night with the gang, with the girls, whatever it might be, to the movies, to out for sodas, to fillets, whatever we could do, we did that. Also, we had a baseball team. At that time, we had a club called the Sioux, and we had a baseball team, which in turn played in tournaments around the city. We were very good at that particular time. We won a multitude of tournaments, and we continued to do those things. And in the process of doing it, I got to 1944, the end of 1944, and this was during the war. I decided that I was going to enlist in the Navy, and I enlisted in the Navy at the end of 1944, beginning of 1945, and I did this with a friend of mine. We went down to Plymouth Court in Chicago. I signed up, and as soon as I signed up for the Navy, my friend ran out, and at that time, I don't think I've ever seen him after that. But before that, we were very good friends. He belonged to the same club I did, and so forth. I enlisted in the Navy. I was called at the beginning of the year in 1945. I came down, and I was ordered to be shipped to Great Lakes Naval Training Station. And when I went there, I was going there because somebody recommended that I become an athletic instructor. And so they were shipped to Great Lakes Naval Training. I took my training over there, and I graduated as seaman. And when I did that, it was told to me that there was no way that I can become a athletic instructor because that class and that schooling was closed down. The war at that time, after I got through, was starting to wind down. So I in turn ended up with taking an aptitude test, and taking the aptitude test, I proficiened out in medical technologies and so forth, and that's when I became decided to go to San Diego to get involved in X-ray technician, and that's where I went, and I graduated there.
Rancho Santa Fe Security, have a call back.
Yeah, please. Yeah, tell them I'm on the speaker on the phone. I'll call them back in an hour. In the process of doing that, I already told you most of the things about being in the service and what I did in the service and so forth. And I, in turn, now I'm going to end up starting to go through what I did after getting out of service, and I told you about certain things that I did as far as work is concerned. I'm going to probably repeat myself, but and also when I was in service, and I was in Corona Naval Hospital, doing the work at the hospital in charge of the X-ray department there. I in turn spent my weekends at a cousin of mine's in Los Angeles, so I used to hitchhike to Los Angeles from Northern California every weekend and hitchhike back. And at that time, everybody seemed to give you a ride or want to give you a ride, so we had no problem with that. But at Corona Naval Hospital, that was a tuberculosis hospital, and that's when penicillin first started, and we in turn the process of taking care of people and doing people. That's what we did there. Many people died at that particular time, but we did save lives and so forth. But when I was at my cousin Millie's house, and she in turn, and my Aunt Ethel there, they really did a great job, took care of me. But in also the time, in turn, they had friends, so I was able to go out to the shows and deal with those people and have a great time for the year that I spent there. I also did something that was crazy at that particular time. I smoked a cigar, and at that time I dropped the cigar one night and the couch there, and I set a fire at the house. We extinguished the fire, but we lost the couch, and eventually I sent the money to pay for the new couch. Going back up a little farther after the service and everything else, I became involved. And as I told you in the previous thing, I was working and I became in the liquor business. When I became in the liquor business, I was involved with the group who in turn from the liquor industry, who had to make a determination of some charitable organization to get involved in. And getting involved in that charitable organization, we had to pick the one we wanted to. We had a double faction there. We had, at that time, 100% of the liquor business in Chicago, whether it was the wholesale business or the retail business, was either owned by Jewish people or by Italian people. So a group of us got together and we analyzed the different organizations that were around and what we should do and how we should get involved in this. We felt we should give something back to the community, and we ended up with looking at a multitude of charities, whether they were Italian, whether they were Jewish, whether they were just non-sectarian, whatever it was. And we voted on taking and being involved in City of Hope. And at that time, City of Hope, prior to the 50s, was involved with tuberculosis, which was important to me at that time because I was involved in the service in that. Since the advent of penicillin in 45, they changed their outlook and they went into a catastrophic disease type of center, which in turn was research and treating of patients with cancer, diabetes, and anything else that had to do with catastrophic diseases. This was somewhere in around 1959, 1960, when I went into the liquor business, first joined the group of Cane Beverage Mart. And through the years as we went along, we in turn were involved with this chapter. We did a multitude of things. We had, and I was involved in from 1966 to 1989, 1990. I was involved in approximately 15 honor ceremonies. I was the chairman of the committee for honoring people for lifetime awards for City of Hope through the years. And in turn, in 1978, I personally was awarded honor as the Spirit of Life Award for the liquor industry of the state of Illinois. And at that time, I raised money for this one to take care of one of the first bone marrow transplants that was done at City of Hope. And it took care of a person from Germany who was a young girl at that time who had leukemia. Was 19 years old, and I went up to the City of Hope and saw everything, saw this woman, talked to this woman, and so forth. We raised somewhere in the vicinity of about $600,000, and that was sufficient to take care of, more than enough to take care of the bone marrow transplant that was administered to this woman. And to this day, this woman is still alive, and that's a long period of time. You're talking about somewhere in the vicinity of 30, 35 years. Are we all right?
Yeah.
30, 35 years. And she's still alive, and from that time on, I've been totally involved as a volunteer, doing charitable work for them, raising money from them, and in the process of doing, I'm sure that I raised millions of dollars for City of Hope, and personally have given City of Hope about $500,000. And we interred at this time, in the last 5 or 6 years, I have bought a examining room at City of Hope, and my children bought an examining room at City of Hope, so we have our name at City of Hope and do it. And that in turn, I did that and was involved in that. In the process, when I was involved with that, I was also chairman of JUF, Jewish United Fund, in Chicago, and I also the children's wing of one of the hospitals in Chicago I was involved in too. I also worked as a volunteer at Skokie Valley Hospital, which in turn I did helped out the nurses in the administering of shots, of taking care of patients, of doing different things, filling medications for them and so forth. And I did that for 7 years, and at this hospital. I left that hospital in 1992 because I moved to California from Chicago. When I got to San Diego at that time, I ended up here, and I went to work at Pomerado Hospital here, but I didn't like it because it was totally different in Chicago. I had no contact with the patients. I couldn't do anything. They wanted me to work in a cafeteria, which I had no desire to do, to work in a cafeteria. So I did not work there very long. I only worked there 2-3 years. And after those 2 or 3 years, I gave that up. And we moved from our condo that we had here, we moved into a house. And I just floated around, did my thing, involved in business with my son, the real estate business. We own property downtown. And that's what I did for a while. And at that time, I started a club in San Diego, which was a Chicago club. Chicago club was a club with, we brought entertainment from Los Angeles, from those areas here to get people, to bring people there to show them entertainment, show them fine time with food and whatever it might be. And we did that for 4 years. We really charged them really $30 a year, and we had 4 affairs a year, plus we gave them a free picnic once a year. So they really enjoyed it, and we had to raise it to $35 or $40, and we started losing some people because they didn't want to pay that much for a year. And finally, the last year, we've tried to raise it to $50, and we couldn't get enough. We had to have at least 200 people, and we ended up with 150, which was not enough to cover the expenses. So we gave up that, and that lasted until about 1999, 1997 and through that particular area there. And at that time I said to myself, I'm just not going to sit down. I can't play golf every day. I have to do something. So I told City of Hope that I was going to open up an office in San Diego for them. And I did. I turned around, I went into my son's office, and I told him that I need a cubicle in the office to open up an office for City of Hope. And it ended up that I had a great discussion, but we finally agreed that I would get a cubicle in there. So I took the cubicle, I went to the front, I had a sign painter come in, put my City of Hope San Diego office here right on top of my son's logo of Trilogy Management. And he didn't like that so much, but I did that, and I professed to go ahead and start business and do things that I would do to raise money for City Hope. Everybody thought that it would never be successful, and City Hope didn't think it, so they didn't send anybody down, send me some material, but they wouldn't send anybody down. In the first 8 months I functioned, we raised some money, and they finally agreed that maybe it would work, and they sent somebody down. And with them, we worked, and we established, we had a dinner, initial dinner, which I enticed somebody to be the honoree, and we raised $50,000 at that time. And then we had another dinner, and we raised another $60,000, $70,000. So they thought that Rita, hey, this might be successful. And that's what we did. And after the first year, 15 months, we turned around and we had to move out of the area because we needed a bigger space. We needed computers. We needed other things that we didn't have in the little cubicle. So we moved into one of our spaces that was owned by my son and myself and a multitude of other people. We took this space over, which was 3 times the size. We hired another person to come into the office, and we continued to increase the revenue coming in from different people, which we enticed to donate to City of Hope or be honored at some kind of function. And that's the way it went for another year and a half. And after that year and a half, that space was too small, so we turned around and we rented a space away from anything that we had. We hired 2-3 more people, and we professed to start a walk that we had from 2002 and to raise money, and we had 3-4 functions a year which we raised money, and we've done that, and we've increased every year, and now we probably raised somewhere in the vicinity of $2.5 million a year through this office, and it is functioning properly and well, and we are there. And in the process of that, I was asked 3 years ago to become involved in the Ambassador Leadership Council, which was established to create a liaison between the main office and the chapters around the country, which was 283 chapters. And we in turn are functioning through the main office of City of Hope in Los Angeles on 1055 Wilshire Boulevard. We go up there every other month. We have our meetings, and we just designate what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and how we can create an environment where the older people that belong to chapters for 40, 50 years can and still be involved, and yet not do the things they used to do, which is canning or running around or delivering lock boxes and things like that. Now it's a matter of running a few functions and raising money on that particular way of doing business. So that's what we do, and we also are involved in establishing or running a convention, which City of Hope has every 3 years, which they bring the delegates from all over the country, showing them the new things that City of Hope does and what they do and how they do it and so forth, and show them a good time for 3 days there. and indoctrinate them into the new facilities and everything else that City of has. City of Hope started basically with a tent in near Pasadena in Duarte, California, and the reason it started, how it started, is that City of Hope was a group of people got together in Los Angeles, and it started as a consumptive organization, which meant that it took care of people with tuberculosis. At that time, the only thing that would really help tuberculosis is bring them to a dry, sunny climate. So people got on a bus from Los Angeles and drove, and they drove to almost the border of Los Angeles and Arizona, and they stopped there by Pasadena because that was a beautiful, dry, sunny area, and they set up a tent in that particular area, and that's where City of Hope started in 1913. From there, City of Hope has progressed throughout the years. As I said, prior to it, it started out as taking care of tuberculosis patients, and that was it. And in 1945, when City of Hope, or penicillin came into effect, and it eradicated basically tuberculosis, City of Hope changed its concept and went into a treatment and research of catastrophic diseases, which in turn was diabetes or cancer, or later on HIV, AIDS. These were the things they do, and through the years, City of Hope is rated one of the top 10 research facilities in the United States. It is now at the point at 192 acres. It has somewhere in the vicinity of 92 to 100 major buildings on the structure. It has a new hospital that was built on the premise that is a state-of-the-art. There's no other hospital in the country that was like that when we built it 3 years ago. It is one of the finest research development on diabetes, on cancer, stem cell, lymphoma. We are number one on the West Coast in regards to bone marrow transplant, which we do bone marrow transplant for a multitude of hospitals throughout there. And today we are the number one in robotic prostate surgery, which we also do robotic surgery and on lungs, on brains, on kidneys. So we are rated in the top U.S. News and World, and everybody is rated City of Hope there. And one of the features, or the great features about City of Hope, the ratio of patient to doctor, nurse, and so forth is 1 to 2. So every patient has basically a private room. Every patient is treated by the doctor, who in turn does the research on the particular ailment that this individual has. We at City Hope now treat approximately 145,000 outpatients a year. We have a capacity there to take care of approximately 280 or 290 people in the hospital at one given time, and the budget at this particular time is somewhere around $585 million a year. That means that City of Hope is the premier, and I am in love with City of Hope because of the fact that number one, when I was allowed to become one of the first to use penicillin in the service, City of Hope was already doing this, and that probably subconsciously brought me to City of Hope and has kept me with City of Hope for these last 45 to 48 years. I hope that I can in turn continue to be with City of Hope for as long as I have the capability of thinking well or able to move around and do what I probably can at that particular time. Okay, starting going into a few other things that are there that in the process when I was in travel, in business, and when I became involved or went to Europe for the Pure Oath wine when I took over, which I explained in another part of my interview. We traveled, we went to Europe and we traveled in Europe. And we met the people from the Pure Oath Company in England, which in turn they had tickets for Wembley Stadium, which is a soccer game between Germany and England. And we were there. We flew in, my wife, myself, and we walked in there. We met them. They took us into Wembley Stadium. In Wembley Stadium, there was 150,000 Englishmen and 20,000 Germans, and the 20,000 Germans made more noise than 150,000 Englishmen. In the process, England won that particular match, so it was good for that and the country and so forth. When we left that, we toured London with these people, which they had a car for us and everything else. And the following day, we flew over to the Netherlands and got out of the car, the plane, and were searched and done everything else. And we, in turn, ended up leaving, getting in a car, and ending up driving to Germany, which in turn we were welcomed by the people who owned the company. We were wined and dined at that time, and we ended up with a plan to travel Europe. But in the process of traveling Europe, we were going to go to Austria, which we stayed at a baron's house. We boar hunted, we sightseeing, we enjoyed the scenery. I thought Austria was a great, great place. We went from Austria to Italy. In Italy, we traveled Italy, and in a car, we had a special car that we had a driver that took us all over. We traveled to Italy. We sightseed. We were in Venice. We were in Rome. We were all over in Italy. We ended up from Italy. We came back into France. And in France, I was honored as a Chevalier de Testament, which in turn in Europe is an honor bestowed on people who are connoisseurs of wine tastings, and the ability to classify wines in different areas. The function that we had at that time was a 3-day affair. It was just out of this world. We were knighted by these people. I wore the gowns. I wore the hat that had to be. We had 5-6 different meals, and each meal had wine with it, which we had to say where to try and figure out where they were from and so forth. We had all the great wine tasters of Europe there, especially France, Italy, and Germany, and we ended up there for 3 days, and believe me, I never ate so much in my life and did that, but so I did that. I got the honor, and from there we came back to Germany, and from Germany we were there. This was a 3.5-week trip, which was really a whirlwind trip, and we went back to the United States, and there I professed to continue to make this organization in Chicago grow, using all the means that I could and all the people I could, and it became a nationwide organization that sold a tremendous amount of wine throughout there, and built and regenerated the ability to taste wine and enjoy wine in the United States. I was honored in the United States for doing this, and it was just a great thing that happened, and it was fine, and we enjoyed doing it. I want also to mention a few things that I probably didn't mention before, that I ended up with being involved with a multitude of different people. These people became friends of mine. Firstly, these people from Germany, which in turn I became involved with in the Perrault wine, which was Elmer Perrault and Kuno Perrault, which were the proprietors of Perrault Wine Company. Klaus Metsch, which I told you about, was the general sales manager. We worked together for a multitude of years, and through them, and after that I got into that particular part. It became, and I told you about the coffee liqueur, which we produced and manufactured in Mexico, which I established in the United States under Kakul and then under Sabrosa, which Barton Industries had, which I had a long relationship, which just ended in 2007. And through those period of time, I met people who in turn were great people in their industry, which was people like Billy Getz and Oscar Getz were the owners of Barton's, along with Stuart Abelson and his father, the man who in turn really helped me with the Perrault wine and the Sabrosa was Mort Siegel and Michael Moses, who were the lawyers who really helped me coordinate, or really themselves coordinated, the legal aspects throughout the country to be able to do these things. And people like Buddy Romano and Michael Romano, who had a distributorship in Chicago, who used or took the stuff in and distributed or held it for us for doing it. Also, an individual called Nick Luca, who in turn came to me and worked with me as a young boy, and he became very active in it. We brought him up throughout the organization, and finally he became a sales manager, and through that process he built himself up to the point where when I sold out the interest of mine into there, he asked me if I would help him establish his own business, and which I did, and he now has a flourishing business doing basically what we did before, and the original company's not doing any more business than he is, so he's done it. I think he just sold his business in 2008, but he became a very important people in the business. Also, in the process of doing all this business with the Perrault Company, I got involved with another company who everybody wanted me to become a distributor or something for them, so I became involved with the Husken Company, which was another big operation in Germany. So we did, I represented them in the United States, and through them I represented wineries out of England, out of France, out of Italy, out of Austria, and through them, through the Udo Husken, I was able to get these others and become involved and help them distribute in the United States. I was the first one to bring South African wines, Udi Libertas wines, to the United States, and that was brought in from South Africa, which in turn we did until there was an embargo in the 80s that stopped anything from South Africa coming into the United States. But in the process prior to that, we were able to establish it in the United States, and after the embargo was over, I was not in that business anymore. Somebody else took it over, and I believe that they're definitely selling the wines in the United States. Among other things, and I also represent Paterno Wines, which was a worldwide organization, which was Tony Paterno. In products that he handled, I shipped those products into Mexico and to Europe, and that's the way that goes. And also, in the process of doing all these things, there was a multitude of other things that I did. I turned around in the 1980s. I started DLG Corporation, which I said before, which in turn became a importer-exporter marketing company. I represented at that particular time a multitude of retail businesses who in turn marketed or sold products, and I did the marketing for them, the advertising, the promotion for them, for companies such as Old Style Beer, Miller, Budweiser, Pabst Blue Ribbon, all the basic beers, and became a personal friend of Mr. Pearlstein, who owned Pabst. I also handled Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Diet Right, Mike Weil, and I did that particular thing until I basically left and sold out everything in 1992. Most of these people became personal friends of mine. I created a volume of business for them throughout this marketing, and if I probably stayed in Chicago after 92, which when I semi-retired, I'd probably still be working with them now or doing things with them now. I have contact with a lot of these people to this day. I have contact with a multitude of people that I've done business with throughout the years, and hopefully I'll be around to do a lot more. There's a few other anecdotes that I'd like to interject that I probably did not say or do before. How much more time we have there?
About 15 minutes.
Okay.
10 or 15 minutes.
Okay. We in turn in the early 50s, when I left the X-ray business, I went to work for a company called Sinai Kosher Sausage Company. This company needed a marketing person, a salesman, and somebody recommended it. I went in and I talked to this man, and he was a Damon Runyon character. He woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you had to be with him at 5:30, 5:45, and 11 o'clock. He was true, but he was a shrewd businessman. And he had a project that he wanted me or somebody to do, and we talked, and he hired me, and that project was accomplished. We went to, this is a kosher product, and there was a company that wanted to create a line of kosher products, which was, at this time, I can't even think of the name that it was, but I will put it in later on, that wanted to form a kosher line and put it into stores that had kosher products. So he told me about it. We went together to Detroit, which had Dexter Davison stores, which were all kosher stores. There were 3 of them in Dexter Davis, which were big supermarket, 50, 60,000 square feet supermarket, but it had all kosher products in there. And we went in and we talked to the people, and we talked to them about doing, Oscar Mayer was the name of the company that wanted to do it. And we went in, we talked to them, and we convinced them to go, but the only thing that we did, we couldn't use the word Oscar Mayer because that wasn't fitting for in a kosher store, so we used Dexter Davison, and we created a whole line of products and put it into the store, and it was sold in the store. When we came back from the sales presentation, the man who owned the store, Charles Levin, said to me, okay, here's your office. You sit in the office. When we have another project, I'll call you. In the meantime, you'll get paid, and that's it. And I sat there for a week, had nothing to do, didn't know what to do with it, and I finally decided that I'm going into the office and say, hey, I have to have something to do. I cannot sit here. There's nothing for me to do in this office over here. So I did, and I went in there, and I told him, and he said, just sit there. Don't worry about it. I'll find something for you to do. Don't worry, but this will be taken care of. Well, I did, and I went with him on a couple of trips. We did a sort of, but there was really nothing for me to do. So I ended up, finally, when I got back and I walked into the office, and I said, either I have something to do or I'm leaving. And he told me, okay, I'll find something. 2 days later, I walked in, he says, you didn't find, he says, I don't have anything for you to do. You're entitled to stay here. You can do whatever you want to do. I will pay you. We'll find something to do. And I said, I'm sorry, I cannot do that. And after that, I left and I went to a multitude of other companies until I told you in 1958, 59, I ended up in the liquor business. I told you how I ended up in the liquor business. So in closing, I just want to say that I was married in 1948. I had my first child in 1949, which was Sherry. Second child, Judy, in 1952. Third child, Howard, in 1959. I am blessed with 3 great children. I have 7 grandchildren. It's Todd, Adam, Justin, Jordan, Andrew, Natalie, and Rosie, and I have 2 great grandchildren, which in turn is Charlie and Elliot, and I'm expecting a 3rd one on its way. It has been a very great life for me. I have the respect of all my children. I have the respect of anybody I've done business with, and hopefully that I can continue to do what I have and what I've accomplished in life. I said I was married in 1948. I was divorced in 1998. And the reason for that is my wife was a manic depressive for 40 years, and she finally gave out, and that was the end. But I did stay, and was with her, and I suffered with her, and that's fine. Again, I met somebody, a very nice woman, in 1999, and at that time in 2002, I did wed this woman, and how I wed this woman is that my 75th birthday was there, and my children decided we're going to have a big party, so we had a party here in California at the Del Coronado, and we invited everybody from the family and everything else. We had about 28 people there to go, and my son came up to me at that time. He says, Dad, he says, as long as we're going to have everybody in, why don't you just get married? So we talked about it, and Lee and I talked about it, and we decided, okay, fine, we're going to get married. So we planned a wedding for the 4th. My birthday is August 3rd. We planned a wedding for the 4th of August 2002. We got her whole family together and asked them if they would come, so everybody came. Her brother, who is a rabbi, performed the ceremony. All her other brothers came. We had a ball for 5-6 days at the Dell. Everything was planned. I planned it all. I planned the dinners. I planned everything else. The barbecues. We really had a great time. Everybody had a great time. And we are proceeding to do every year after that, to have an affair every year someplace. And my children and grandchildren come there and do due diligence for that. We were at Louisville. We are now at this year we were at Park City in Utah, and next year hopefully we'll be back in San Diego. Where, I'm not sure yet, but we'll make plans, because now we'll plan so the grandkids can go to Disneyland, Legoland, and SeaWorld, and the zoo, and do that. So in turn, this is what I'm saying. If I have anything, I will continue on the next the next tape that I have, or in the tape recorder. Again, I will do that, and I will put down a multitude of other people that I've been involved in and other things that I've accomplished. Okay, Todd, I think that's it at this time. I probably should be through.
You get it all in?
Huh?
Did you get it all in?
Most of it. I got a bunch that, I'd have to refine it, but that's fine. Was I almost done?
Yeah.